All right, I got a very mixed feeling about Xenoblade 2 and a bit of a bone to pick because Xenoblade 2 being as popular as it is generally a good thing for the franchise. It has way more fans than it ever has. It's doing really well. Like, look on the Switch, you have all these games, right? You have Xenoblade 1 Definitive Edition, you have Xenoblade 2, you have the Torna DLC, you have Xenoblade 3 coming on it. You can play the whole series on this one console. It's great for that. There's tons of fans coming around, a lot of people making content. Like, it's good that that game is as popular as it is. However, that game is very front loaded with a lot of crap. Like, it has a terrible first impression for a lot of people. And what that does is that some people play that game, right? And then the first thing they're met with is a confusing battle system, tons of tutorials that don't really explain shit, questionable voice acting, an art style that they might hate, and a ton of like fan service and shit. And very corny writing, like off the bat. So the first impression is kind of like a slap in the face for some people. And then they drop the game, right? And then their entire impression of the entire Xenoblade franchise is based on that initial experience. Which you can't really blame them for because the game does not load itself well. Like, if you were able to push past that first slap in the face, the game is like a beautiful. It's like the game slaps you in the face and then embraces you in a loving hug, and then takes you on a great date. Like most people aren't gonna go through with the rest of it, but if you do, you find out like this shit wasn't really all that bad in the first place. It makes you really question why there were so many flaws up front. Like, you have to be willing to be patient to push through it, but not everybody is, and as a result, the first off, the kind of people who are attracted to Xenoblade 2 are the kind of people who see that slap in the face and not see it as a bad thing, which results in a lot of certain kinds of people really loving this game, which is usually the more ecchi, like sexual guys. You know the ones. And then also the kind of people who are just like into that stuff anyways, or are able to overlook it, or a variety of people, or really diehard Xenoblade fans. But like, for some, it's just an immediate turn off, and the problem is that it makes everybody think that that's what Xenoblade is. And a lot of people jumped into Xenoblade 2 at the start because it was the most available and the most well-renowned Xenoblade game at the time. Like, Xenoblade Chronicles 1 is generally, I'd say, a better starting off point if you want to get into the series. However, at the time, Xenoblade 1 was only on the Wii, the Wii U, and the new Nintendo 3DS. Specifically, the new Nintendo 3DS. And if you didn't own any of those three things, then you just couldn't play the game. And even if you did play the game, it was in its busted Wii-looking self, which is a hard sell on its own. That's the first Xenoblade's biggest problem, is like the graphics and stuff like that. It takes a certain mind to get into it. It's like the people who won't play Final Fantasy VII Original because of how it looks. It's the same situation. So, and also it's like really hard to find as well. So like, most people, if they like heard about the series by word of mouth or by Shulk being in Smash Brothers or Xenoblade Chronicles X's like buzz, they wouldn't be able to play it. So by the time that they hear Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is coming out and everybody's talking about it and it's getting a lot of good buzz, they might try the game. A lot of people might try the game because it's new, it's an RPG, and then they might get slapped in the face, and then they just don't go through with the rest of it. And that's why I have a bone to pick with Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Again, the rest of that game, if you can push through and learn the battle system, I was in the benefit of having already understood things about the battle system ahead of time because I learned about it. It's really good. And also, like, the story is a little cryptic, hard to follow, but like pays off really well in the last couple chapters. But again, you have to be willing to give it the chance the whole time up until then. And I again was very lucky because one, I am a person who gives chances a lot, but also I was spoiled on certain things, so I was already like, I want to get to the last chapter. I understood certain things about characters because like I played the game for the first time just very recently. In fact, I'm not even done. I'm still finishing. I'm like at the last chapter at the end, but I already heard a lot of spoilers about it from like Torna and things like that, and like I was processing certain things. So when more cryptic elements of the character or the stories were being brought up, I was comprehending it better. But that's again a benefit to me. I feel like this game is way better on the second playthrough, but you have to push through that first playthrough, and not a lot of people will, and that's why it's a bit of a problem. And another thing, my last point, I think, but another thing that comes up as a result of this, and I really want to stress this, that another thing that comes up as a result of uh like this divide and the way that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 kind of colors like people who either didn't play the game or played very little of the game's opinions is that they assume that one, Xenoblade, all of Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is just a fan servicey big titty uh shonen garbage that like it looks like on the outside, right? Or is like front loaded as. And then a lot of the fans of the game are the kind of people who like that kind of etchy thing and like only care about like Pyra and Mithra and how big their titties are. Like legit look at like a try to look up Xenoblade Chronicles 2 fan art. It's like 99% just those two characters wearing different clothes or doing sexual stuff. Or just them. Like they're the most popular characters in that game without a doubt. At least from the outside. And of course, now people out from the outside are assuming people who didn't like get into the game or don't like that stuff are assuming this is just what the whole series is like, and they talk shit about it, right? They talk shit about it and get in arguments with the people who actually played the game, who have to either try and convince them that it's a great game or that it's that like none of the perversion and like etchy elements are bad, which is a hard sell because that's debatable. And meanwhile, here comes another group of people who has to try and who's trying desperately to convince the people who think that Xenoblade 2 represents, like the early parts of Xenoblade 2 represents the entire series. He's trying to convince them that, no, this isn't what the rest of the series is like. Play Xenoblade 1. Xenoblade 1 is like so much better than Xenoblade 2. And what that does is cause conflict between the Xenoblade 2 people and the Xenoblade 1 people, who are effectively, like the Xenoblade 1 people are basically throwing the Xenoblade 2 people under the bus so that they can convince people that the franchise is worth a damn. It's just like this really toxic cesspool. And I'm not trying to call the fan base toxic. I really don't think they are. I think the reason they act the way they do is because of circumstances and because of like an unfortunate reputation that the series gets. And they want to defend the things that they love. But they then end up fighting amongst each other because they are effectively trying to get to the same goal, but have to fight each other to do it. They want other people to see what they're seeing, you know, and it doesn't always work. Or they just want to be able to be like not ridiculed for the things that they like, which again, this is not. It's just like all of this comes down to the fact that Xenoblade 2 does not have a very strong first impression, but that is the game that popularized the series. And then like you really have to try hard to get people to get past that part. I've been watching my dude Parappa play that game. Well, I wasn't watching because I was playing the game myself and trying to avoid spoilers. But that man does not take that game very seriously, which admittedly there's a lot of reasons not to. But like it's hard if you can't keep somebody's attention long enough or get them invested in a serious way, then they're going to continue to go through the rest of the game with that impression. And again, that's going to colorize the rest of it. I'm not going to say that perhaps it's that close-minded, but it's just, the game, it struggles in places. It has a lot of elements that appeal to certain wide audiences, but then also kind of takes away from the story it's trying to tell and makes it very hard for other people to get into it. and that's the most popular Xenoblade game. Like up until recently, Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is actually allowed people to play Xenoblade Chronicles 1 in a way that most people would actually be willing to give it a shot. But it's a little late, you know? And like it's like only some people are jumping onto that now. Like it's I think Xenoblade 3 might be a turning point though. I think a lot of people who might play Xenoblade 3 as their first game or things like that might actually it might finally bring peace to the fan base or not, who knows. It might bring peace to the Xenoblade universe and have people respect it or not. I don't really think that's really something you can do, but that is the circumstances and that's the reason why I have a bone to pick with it. Anyways, that's all I had to say.